everybody? Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. I'm Matthew Coller here. We're live again with some comments today from Kevin O'Connell regarding the future of Brian Flores and whether there is a chance that JJ McCarthy could start this week. So we will get into all that. I've made a list of teams that could be interested in Brian Flores in any capacity. So I will break that down. And then here's my question to you guys. And this is a wide open show. The next hour, totally yours. And then Brian Murphy and Manny Hill come on, which of course will still take questions, comments, thoughts, and so forth. Do you feel like you need to see JJ McCarthy one more time this year against the Packers team that is not likely to play many of its starters, whichever ones they have left? I mean, that team is completely banged up. At one point, they're playing, I don't know what it was, fifth string corner or something the other night, but either way, they're not going to play their top players. They're going to try to get as healthy as they can, I would assume, for the postseason, as they are locked into the 7 seed. And now the game has no juice from that capacity. But if JJ McCarthy played, it would have a little more energy going into it. Do you feel like you need to see JJ McCarthy? Let me know yes or no. Like, are you good? Do you feel like you understand who he is right now, where he needs to go, what the Vikings should do? Or could he change your mind? Do you need one more game of JJ McCarthy? So we'll get into what Kevin O'Connell had to say there. I have made a list of teams that could be interested in Brian Flores, and I'll get to that in just a second, but wanted to bring you what Kevin O'Connell had to say about Flores's status. I was there today and had a chance to ask O'Connell if he has discussed Brian Flores' future with the Vikings defensive coordinator and about his importance to this franchise and coming back.
Kevin, there were a couple of reports over the weekend about Brian Flores and his future. I guess, how would you describe the importance of having him here going forward, and just have you guys had discussions about his future?
Yeah, we have, and then goes back a long ways before those reports. But yeah, we've had recent dialogue, very, very good dialogue. Flo knows I love him. He was the guy 3 years ago that I identified to bring in here, and the growth and just our relationship and what he's meant to me personally is so massive, and that's not even taking into account what he's been able to do defensively for our team, and been such a huge part of helping us daily, minute to minute, kind of weather the different storms we had to navigate this year, and things are in a really positive place right now. I absolutely want Brian Flores to be the defensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings as long as we can have him. I would say this, I do know that, he's demonstrated a lot of things that have, having gone through the process of the head coach hiring process before myself, I imagine he's going to be a pretty popular guy there as well, and rightly so. He's earned everything, and that doesn't take away from the route we want to go to make sure he's our defensive coordinator here for the foreseeable future.
So they're a very definitive statement from Kevin O'Connell, not a surprising one by any means, considering how good this defense has been and also the way that it has come together with the players around Brian Flores. And, I've always taken the most value in the comments of people who don't have anything to gain by making comments, so put it that way. And I saw Stephon Gilmore not too long ago tweet something about, how badly the Vikings need to keep Brian Flores. And then I saw the other night, Anthony Barr tweeted something to the extent of, hey, throw the bag at, Brian Flores, give him whatever he needs in order to keep him here. So Anthony Barr, Stephon Gilmore, again, those guys have nothing to gain by saying that, but they played for Brian Flores, and they also have much more knowledge of NFL defense than all of us put together with those two guys, and they understand what goes into making Brian Flores' defense great. And of course, we've all seen it many, many times here. We can remember the times that Flores' defense got beat more often than we can remember, the great performances. They stand out more because it is so rare that teams have taken advantage of this extremely aggressive, extremely dynamic defense. And a lot of the times that it happened this year, it was mostly because they were playing from behind and they were getting run on, or just they didn't have a lot of their key players. And since their players have come back, especially Cashman, Harrison Smith, and Andrew Van Ginkel, they have been once again an elite defense. And from Kevin O'Connell's perspective, I mean, he should be chipping in a little bit to the Brian Flores fund for this year, because when you think about where this team is offensively, I saw Alec Lewis tweeted out a chart of their DVOAs, which is the kind of advanced yardage statistic from FTN Fantasy now. But, if you're an OG analytics person, that's a Football Outsider stat from Aaron Schatz. But if you have seen those numbers, it's pretty clear the Vikings over the last 3 years have had much better defenses than offenses. Last year, of course, the offense ends up top 10 in scoring. But 2023, they hang around in the race in part because of their defense. And then this year, an opportunity to get back over 500 because of defensive takeovers in the second half of the season. And even if we look back at some of the games they lost, it's not like they gave up 40 points. It's not like what happened to San Francisco and Chicago the other night. They've only had that game really against the Chargers and to some extent against the Eagles, although, get a touchdown in the red zone and, you have to bail out your defense from time to time. But it hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been untouchable, but it has been really, really darn good. And there is some variance to blitzing all the time and being as aggressive as they are. But in today's NFL, where if you sit back, I also saw Anthony Barr tweeting about Dennis Allen playing cover 2 over and over again and getting picked apart by the San Francisco 49ers. If you sit back and you're not aggressive, then teams will often pick you apart unless you have basically the best front four in the NFL. I think the Vikings is good, but I don't think they have one where they could just sit there and rush four. And we saw that when Ed Donatel was here, the implications of that if you're not perfect up front or in coverage. So Flores' approach, his innovation, his ability to galvanize his players, the endorsements that he gets from his players, the fact that Harrison Smith came back in part because he wanted to play again for Flores. I mean, it's really a no-brainer from the perspective of Kevin O'Connell to want him back. And I think that when you look at, divvying up kind of the wins over the last couple years, there's been quite a few that the Vikings would not have much of a chance if they did not have Flores' defense. But O'Connell was asked, and the reason this is such a big discussion is because he is a free agent. And we just don't see this that often, where a coordinator takes it all the way to the end and says, I'm going to be a free agent. I mean, normally they get fired if they're leaving somewhere. I can't remember too many instances where someone's contract ran out and that they would be so highly sought after like this. But O'Connell was asked if he thinks there's a chance that Flores could leave and take a lateral move to another defensive coordinator position.
Flo, obviously the head coach situation was an entire one part of it, but do you anticipate any scenario where he's somebody else's defensive coordinator next year?
Based upon my dialogue with him and obviously the enthusiasm and the want to for us to get something done, I don't. But I also know, we're inside of days before our season ends, and he's obviously, I know he enjoys being here. I know him and I just from our recent dialogue that he feels very similar about me that I do with him, and I know I'm excited about the when we can, hopefully I can come to this podium and say he's going to be here for.
So there you go. Kevin O'Connell saying he does not expect a lateral move from Brian Flores. So I was looking at every team in the NFL and trying to figure out, okay, who would be interested in him as a head coaching candidate if the league can put the lawsuit thing aside. And I mean, truly, I know they're petty people and they have their club and they make the rules, as we have seen plenty of times before from the NFL owners. But at some point, keeping a coach this good off your team might be a bad idea. And really, I mean, Pittsburgh was the one that brought him in and decided to kind of break rank to some extent there and keep him in the National Football League. And then the Vikings obviously making him the DC, really gave him this second opportunity. So if one team is willing to have him as an assistant of some kind, another team is willing to have him as a DC. It's a little bit different when you're the front door. It's also a little bit different when you have this history with a quarterback. It does matter that even though Tua has not turned out to be a great quarterback, that relationship was not very good, because the head coach and quarterback relationship is really important. But I also think that Tua over the last couple of years has maybe made Flores look a little bit better. And also, people change, people grow. There are a lot of coaches whose second opportunity went better than their first opportunity, even though Flores did win a lot of games with the Miami Dolphins. But being around Kevin O'Connell and seeing how he operates and working with him so closely and watching how O'Connell can build up a locker room the way that he does and the relationships with the players and, all that sort of stuff, I think it's useful for Brian Flores. So if you're another team that's having him for an interview, I think that's something that he would be focusing on. And again, people can learn from their experiences. So I think Flores is a great head coaching candidate, especially when you look at some of the other ones. It's a little bit underwhelming this year, I think. So here's my list. There are quite a few teams that would have a case for hiring Flores as a head coach. So I'll start with the most obvious one. Is today Adam Schefter said that he thinks it's possible that the Pittsburgh Steelers could be without Mike Tomlin next year. Not necessarily getting fired, but he might. If they lose to the Baltimore Ravens, it may not be a fired, it may be a stepping away type of situation, going to do TV for a year, that kind of thing, rather than having him fired, because I don't think that their organization wants that. They love being the organization that has 3 coaches since the 70s. Or whatever that number is. But so I don't know if they would do that, but he left the door open for Mike Tomlin maybe not being the coach next year. And you think if they lose next week, that's going to be pretty tough for them to keep going in that same direction and repeating the same results over and over again. And really, even if the Steelers beat the Ravens next week, it's still kind of the same thing over and over for that organization. So if they were to move on from him, I think Brian Flores becomes a potential candidate. He was already in their building. They need a refresh defensively. When they played the Vikings and then other times I've seen them this year, I've been completely unimpressed by what they're doing defensively. It feels like it hasn't really changed enough to keep up with a lot of the Brian Flores types. And he could get an opportunity there just because they have that organizational familiarity with him. Now, they might look for a quarterback whisperer, but I don't know if that's how that organization does it, like best man for the job, rather than trying to, as so many teams do, because they went from Coller to Tomlin. So many teams will try to, oh, wait, we just had the Mike Zimmer, so now we're going to hire the Kevin O'Connell, right? Like a lot of teams do it that way. I don't know if Pittsburgh would. So they are at the top of the list if they are to move on from Tomlin or he is to move on from them. The next one would be quite a shock. And I think, again, it's probably they'd be looking for a more of a quarterback whisperer type. But the Baltimore Ravens fell into both categories for me as a team that could be interested in Flores as a head coach if they lose next week, if they decide to fire John Harbaugh, which would feel insane because of his record and he's got a Super Bowl. But that relationship with Lamar Jackson, there was reporting on that. Seems like something is missing a little bit there, and there's been pressure on him for quite a while. They haven't been able to win in the playoffs with Lamar Jackson playing like an MVP. And if Jackson feels like, it's time for the coach to go and he wants someone else in there, then I don't know, right? Usually the player has to win out, because look at quarterback play around the league. One down year for Lamar Jackson, as they found out before, is not time to bail on him. He just needs to get closer to 100% health. So he could also be someone that their defense has been pretty mediocre with all those weapons that they have to work with. And they've had a lot of injuries too. Their defensive tackle, who was a star, went out early. Is that Matabike went out earlier in the season. Like, they've had injuries and stuff, but it's been an unimpressive defense for a team that's usually known as having a lot defensively. So if they were to throw the bag at Flores, maybe he would be interested in going back to the AFC North, and having a lot of it comes down to what's your quarterback situation. This is why we talked about it with Dallas, is what's your quarterback situation? Are you going to have to drag somebody all the way through the season like Flores did this year? Or can you just do your job and win a heck of a lot of football games? Because if Lamar bounces back and the Ravens are really good defensively, you're talking about a Super Bowl potential type of team. So I had Baltimore on my list if there's a change there, or if they want to throw the bag at him as a defensive coordinator. Cleveland is a possibility. And you might say, well, hey, man, you can't take some of these bad jobs. But usually if it's a head coaching job, it's bad. That would be very unusual if it's Pittsburgh and Baltimore. And I'm still not 100% convinced that either one of those teams would do it. It's usually a team like Cleveland. And if you are Brian, and talk about breaking rank, right? Like, what owner is crazy enough to trade for and sign the biggest contract for a quarterback ever in history with guaranteed money? Well, that is Jimmy Haslam. So if he is already kind of a rogue owner, he might consider doing something like that where others would not if they fire Kevin Stefanski. Atlanta is a possibility. I don't know if Raheem Morris is going to be there for another year. It's just another disappointing season for them, where if Atlanta was even a little above average, they're in the playoffs, and they were not. So if they move on, Atlanta seems like a franchise that, they were bold in signing Kirk Cousins to a $100 million guaranteed contract. Arthur Blank has got to be pretty desperate. I'm thinking along the lines of, like, who would be motivated to say, forget you other owners, I need my guy. And of course, Dallas comes into play there as well as the main team that's been brought up. I couldn't find too many teams, though, that would be just looking for a DC. Now, Cincinnati would be, but are they going to open their pockets? Like, that seems really unlikely. They are the cheapest team in the NFL, but, they're a team that would maybe be looking for a defensive coordinator if he wanted to make that lateral move. It's just hard to see them ponying up and making him the highest paid defensive coordinator ever because, they're Cincinnati and they don't tend to want to pay just about anyone. Washington was another team where if it's Dan Quinn, they're going to stick with his defense and his defensive style. If not, though, if they do not stick with Quinn, which would kind of be crazy, right? They were in the NFC Championship, but their team is really melted down the stretch. They could be looking at Brian Flores as well. The Colts, I don't know what they're going to do with Shane Steichen after this collapse, but it would be kind of surprising if they stayed with him after falling apart. I know that they had to go to Phillip Rivers, but still, the Tennessee Titans should be on the list of, they need a culture changer. They need some, think about what Flores took over in Miami and got them to be a consistent playoff contender after taking over a tanking team. The Titans, I don't think their ownership is all that trustworthy either. They tend to fire people left and right. But if there's somebody that would actually make you look serious as a franchise, then maybe Tennessee would be on that list. And then very, very high would be the Las Vegas Raiders. The familiarity with Tom Brady and the Patriot connection there. I've seen multiple people who were part of the Patriot Way endorsing Brian Flores. I think it was Jason or Devin. I can't remember. I think it was Jason McCarthy on Twitter, and James White, who was one of their running backs. I've seen a lot of people jumping forward from the Patriot world to say, hey, give this guy another opportunity. And with Tom Brady involved with the Raiders and apparently having a fairly big say, they could be interested as well. If they move on from Pete Carroll, I don't know if Flores would go there to be their DC. You might rather just be in Minnesota. But if there was a promise of be the DC for 1 year and then get the head coaching job, maybe if there's a handshake agreement there that it could be a little bit different. So it is far from a lock that Brian Flores remains a Minnesota Viking, though it's clear that they want him back. It's clear what his impact has been, but I don't know the way that this is going to go. It feels like we've come close to reaching critical mass on this of it's downright ridiculous to keep this guy out of a head coaching position. And the only other recent blackballing that I can think of is Colin Kaepernick. And Colin Kaepernick, while a decent quarterback, was not Tom Brady. He wasn't so good that there was no keeping him out of the league. Teams could very reasonably, owners could very reasonably say, not in a, look, they were wrong. They're wrong for blackballing a player no matter what, and they paid for that. But the point being that you could say reasonably, we'd rather just draft a quarterback. We'd rather just get somebody else and look at his numbers versus theirs. And you could say, all right, well, his last season as a starter, he won like 3 games and wasn't that great. Brian Flores, if you were making a quarterback comparison and thinking about what it's worth in terms of points or wins or whatever, I mean, you'd have him as a top 10 quarterback. So there's only so long that the owners can go on with this until somebody says, all right, we just need the best coach here and forget about the internal politics with our little group club. So I think there is a good chance of that, but no guarantees at all. I just couldn't find, other than Dallas, many possible lateral moves. So the ball, it really is somewhat in Flores' court, whether he wants to return. But I think it comes down to Dallas or Minnesota. Which one do you want to be at? Because I can't find many other lateral moves. Maybe Baltimore. It's just not that many. So Dallas or Minnesota, which one do you want? Do you want a project to rebuild and an offense ready-made for you? Do you want to return to a place that's been great for you with a defense that you built in your vision and a head coach whose culture you understand and an ownership that is not Jerry Jones, which would be, I think, quite a change from the Wilfs? And then the other part of it is, if a head coaching opportunity does come calling, Brian Flores has to take it. He's fought so hard for it to get back and was deserving the last time based on the numbers that his team put up. But when he left Miami, there was enough that was put out there about how things went in Miami and his battles with the ownership and things Ryan Fitzpatrick said about him and Tua that you could see where teams would have like a hesitation there in interviewing him, etc. But now, after he's been here and it's gone so well, I don't think so. Let me talk for a second about the other big headline-ish from today at TCO Performance Center, which is that JJ McCarthy, according to Kevin O'Connell, is progressing with his hand fracture, and that there has been reduced swelling for JJ McCarthy, and it remains possible that he could play in the game. Now, normally when McCarthy has had injuries in the recent past, I've said, hey, if he doesn't practice Wednesday, like this is pretty much, out. Like he's not going to happen. But in this instance, he's had an entire season with the Vikings now, or 8.5 games at least. And I don't know that he would need the entire week to get ready when it's just a hand. If you could be limited in practice and go through some of the stuff, and then on game day, your hand feels good enough and there's enough, swelling's gone down. I'm not sure how a hand fracture works. One of you doctors in the comments is going to have to tell me, but if it is enough reduced pain to throw, then you could be a guy like it doesn't practice all week and then goes and plays. That seems possible. And Kevin O'Connell did say that he thinks it's important to get one more game for JJ McCarthy, which circles back to my question there to you guys for the comments, which I'll get to in just a moment, which is it important to you that JJ McCarthy plays in this game? And I want to get you the FanDuel question of the day. Got a quick ad read, and then I'll get to your questions. So to me, I'll answer my own question first, is I don't think it is for me that important that he plays. It's helpful to get more reps in a preseason type environment. And anytime you're dropping back in a real game and guys are playing football out there who are in the NFL, even if they're backups and they're trying and they're game planning and whatever, it's positive for somebody like JJ McCarthy. I thought that he should have played more preseason games, even if there was the risk of injury, because anytime you're suited up, the helmet on, you're looking at defenses, you're making throws into windows, you're getting reps, that's progress. That's been the frustrating part of the injuries, is the lack of progress. So if he can do it, then that's good. But what I will not do is judge the performance as part of the bigger picture for next season. The injuries, the numbers, they are what they are. Those to me cannot be altered by a week 18 type of performance because, hey, the Seattle Seahawks once threw a lot of money at Matt Flynn for an end of the year great showing. Or you saw the other night against this Packers defense, Tyler Huntley, who wasn't even on that football team earlier this year, he went out and played great. They couldn't stop him. Tyler Huntley, who was bouncing around. I mean, if that guy has the capability of ripping apart this Green Bay defense when they were trying because of all their injuries, and now they're not going to be playing everybody more likely than not, then I'm not going to say, oh, wow, he threw for 250 and 3 touchdowns. Like, don't go out and get anybody else. Like, that's just, that to me is the fool's gold that I talked about weeks ago. And I got another crazy stat on that I was looking up today, that the opposing defenses for the Cowboys, Commanders, and Giants, I believe they gave up 90 touchdowns and created 21 interceptions this year, something like that. So, the fool's gold that we were talking about, that's what it could be. It can trick you, that type of Week 18 performance. Remember, there were real people very high on Alexander Hollins once upon a time because he had a good game in the meaningless Week 18. So, FanDuel question of the day is, the 49ers are plus 900 to win the Super Bowl. That is now the 4th best odds. They've shot up. And if they beat Seattle next week, they'll get the 1 seed, which is absolutely insane. The Jaguars are plus 1,300 to win the Super Bowl. These are the 2 teams for me that were the biggest surprises coming into the season. I did not think San Francisco was going to be this good, and I definitely did not think the Jags were going to be this good. I had them improving. You can look it up in my preseason predictions article. I did have them improving by quite a bit, but I did not have them being this good. Who has surprised you the most? What's the biggest surprise of the year for you? What team? That is the FanDuel question of the day. And I got to tell you about our friends at ZipRecruiter. Purple Insider is always growing and changing and looking to take steps forward in 2026. And I'm lucky to have my great crew of employees. But as a business owner, I'm also well aware of the challenges of trying to find quality people. So if you're hiring for your company, then let me give you advice. Check out ZipRecruiter. With new goals in 2026, you may be looking to add to your squad. And thankfully, there's a place where you can go to help conquer these challenges and achieve your hiring goals. And that is ZipRecruiter. And right now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio. This isn't some run-of-the-mill job website, my friends. They have tools and data that separates them from the pack. ZipRecruiter's matching technology works fast to help you find the top-tier talent so you don't waste time and money. And you can find out right away how many job seekers are in your area that are qualified for your role. Let ZipRecruiter help you find the best people for all of your roles. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate in the first day. See for yourself. Just go to this exclusive website, ziprecruiter.com/audio. Again, ziprecruiter.com/audio, the smartest way to hire. So let me get to your questions and comments. AP Carlin says, mock draft. It's coming, my friend. It's coming. I think that's a good idea. Probably should maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll get Trapasso on, or a draft analyst this week to preview what we're going to be looking at for the off season here. It still feels too soon. They've won some games and they've held me off because, hey, when we did our first mock, I think they were drafting like 9th or 10th, and now they're drafting 17th. I would never tell anybody to not win football games, as always, but that's a big drop because you won these games. Actually, I would sometimes, like how, the Patriots, never mind. Okay, so Edwin says, sign B-Flow at all costs. Johnny, what is the percentage of B-Flow leaving? That's a good question because I'm very up in the air about it. I think there is a decent shot that someone comes calling, a Cleveland, a Vegas, like one of these desperate teams that just says, all right, we're a joke. We need someone to make us not a joke. We can't go hire some random coordinator, someone who knows Sean McVay, which is funny because, O'Connell went 14 last year, Liam Cohen this year. Like the Friends of McVay actually does work as a thing, but we need somebody who's done this before to get our franchise straight. There's quite a few teams that might need that for him as a head coach. And I also think there's the Dallas Cowboys job, if they want to hire him as the defensive coordinator, is enticing because Philadelphia is still pretty good, but they're not the same. And Lane Johnson might retire, and then they're definitely not the same. And Saquon has not been as good. And Washington, they need a lot. And the Giants are just horrific. And you have a lot there that if you just got a decent defense, then you could be a Super Bowl contender if you're Dallas with Dak Prescott the way he played this year in that offense. I'm not saying they would win it, but I mean, my goodness, put Dak Prescott on the Minnesota Vikings. How many wins do they have? 12? 13? I mean, my goodness. So not that he could do it that quickly, but I mean, it's enticing. I might go dead down the middle. This is such a cop-out. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to do that. I think it's 50-50. I think they really want him back, and there's a really good chance that he says, hey, my family's happy here. It's a great organization. All these players love playing for me, and we got something special here. Like, keep pounding. But, man, there's offers you can't resist. So Aaron says, unless Joe Burrow becomes a Viking, we need to roll with McCarthy next year. Is there no interest in Wentz as a backup? Second year in the system, he should be better. A healthier O-line will help the QBs. For me, Carson Wentz is, if you're bringing him back, you better be dang sure that JJ McCarthy is your guy, because that is no option. Carson Wentz, as we saw, is the type of quarterback who could win you 2 games out of 4. But if he has to play any more than that, his injury history is there for a reason. You saw it. He tries to make plays when he can't make plays anymore, puts his body at risk. He's had tons of injuries over the years. He hangs on to the football for too long, takes a lot of hits. I think he's a pure backup quarterback. So if they were to bring back Carson Wentz, it would say to me, oh, they're all in. They love what they've seen. They think that he's on the rise. They're good with him as their quarterback. I don't think he's played well enough to justify that. When you look at the final numbers here before week 18, which, to me is preseason now, if you look at these final numbers, it's just not of the level that you can win with. Even if you have an elite defense, you can't win with this. You can't win with a guy like, here's how a good way to put it. I was looking at JJ McCarthy's expected points added numbers, and you'll hear this all the time. EPA this, EPA that. And I think it's a little bit, what's the right word? Like deep in the weeds kind of analytics talk, or like, I don't know, is esoteric the right way to put it? Like, I'm not sure what the word is, but it feels like that's where we've gone, like go a little too far. DVOA is another one where I feel like it's a little too far, where it's like, okay, like you have to kind of figure out what this math formula is. It's not points for, points against, although I guess we use quarterback rating, but that's been around forever and everybody knows it from playing Madden. So anyway, the point is, I'm looking up EPA today, and JJ McCarthy's expected points added is minus 44 for this year, which out of all the quarterbacks who have thrown at least 200 passes, I believe that is 34th out of 35. And Matthew Stafford's was plus 138. So if you basically the idea is, and this is a very loose interpretation, but it's the basic idea is if Matthew Stafford was here with his performance, as opposed to JJ McCarthy, you'd score 180 more points, which you could say, well, okay, he's a veteran. He's great. He's a Super Bowl champ. I agree. But if Aaron Rodgers was here, the number is like 43. Aaron Rodgers has been a replacement level quarterback this year, and you would have outscored your opponents by, because I think they're -2 in point differential, you would have outscored your opponents by 40 something points and probably been in the playoffs with even average type of play. So that really sort of shows you just how much that performance sinks your team and does not give you a chance to win. So when you play like that overall by the numbers, it's very hard for me to say, bring back Carson Wentz, it'll be fine. Now, if they were in a position where they were like Cleveland, like Tennessee, if they were in Vegas's spot, like if they're just a bad team and they need to, just stick with one guy and hell or high water, okay, yeah. But man, look, even if Flores leaves, look at these defensive players. You can put Durante Jones in there if they want to do that. And you've got enough talent on this defense to still be really, really good. So I don't feel like it would be a good idea at all to just kind of leave it up to fate with JJ McCarthy and risk having this happen again. Because I was looking up historically, like quarterbacks who were not the number 1, 2, or 3 pick, because he was not. He was the 10th pick. So guys who were drafted in the same ballpark, somewhere between, say, just past the top 5, but not out of the first round. So first rounders past the top 5. And I only found 2 guys that succeeded after playing like this in their first 9 games. And that was Josh Allen, who also ran for 8 touchdowns and 600 yards in his first season. So it's a little bit different, and is 6'6" and 250. That one's tough. And the other one is Ryan Tannehill, who is much more comparable to JJ McCarthy, really good athlete, but was very inexperienced coming out of college. I mean, and that took a while. Like the Dolphins bailed on him and he ended up being good with the Tennessee Titans years later. The other ones were like EJ Manuel, Kenny Pickett, who I know like he's more gifted than Kenny Pickett and probably a little bit more than EJ Manuel, but Blaine Gabbert was a very physically gifted guy that, same sort of deal, like showed flashes, just didn't work out. History's not on his side after this many games. So to me, Carson Wentz is below the level of a quarterback that I would go after. I think I need a level up from that. But I respect him. He's a good, backup quarterback, but he's just a backup. He could not save your season, couldn't come in and solidify the quarterback play, couldn't win a training camp battle. You need somebody who could do that. AP Carlin says, only want to see McCarthy if tuning up his mechanics in real games situations. Other than that, doesn't need to play. Green Bay won't be playing their players. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, that's what I mean about, I want to see him, but it's not important to me. It's important for him to get reps. It's not important for me to the evaluation because I've got a full season of multiple different injuries and a performance that in terms of your whatever stat you like, QBR, rating, adjusted net yards per attempt, success rate. I mean, they all kind of try to gather the same type of stuff. It's at the bottom of the league. I mean, the facts are the facts here. If you play like this offensively, you don't get to the playoffs, no matter how good your defense is, no matter how much of a freak show your kicker is. And, we could talk about the coaching all we want, but I mean, even if it was Kyle Shanahan, I don't know if I think if it was Kyle Shanahan, it's better than this, but I don't know how much better, not when the quarterback is turning it over and getting sacked and things like that at that type of rate. So it needs to be better, and they need to be sure that it can be better if they're going to stick with him. But as far as if he comes out and throws for 300, I mean, that just doesn't mean a thing. It's just not the type of action that emulates real football for 2026. So is it good for him? Absolutely. Is it matter to the evaluation at all? For me, no, it doesn't. Johnny says, we should see McCarthy because watching Brosmer is painful. Yeah. The door was kind of left open by Kevin O'Connell today for John Wolford or Brett Rippon, which, Sam Darnold's got 13 wins. It's pretty brutal. It's pretty rough. Brosmer was not supposed to play this year. I will say that. He was not supposed to play. And the way that O'Connell talked about it today sort of sounded like they told him, hey, just don't throw the ball away. Like, just take sacks. Like, unless somebody's wide open, just take a sack. Because they were having such success on defense. So, he didn't turn the ball over, but he's just not ready to play in the NFL. I've always kind of seen him as a guy who could have a long career as a backup, but he needs to develop like anybody else. But I get where you're coming from there. I think Brosmer would play okay against Green Bay. There's a huge difference between a desperate Lions team that is sending everything they got at you and the backups of the Green Bay Packers. It would actually be good for Max Brosmer. Adrian, the objective of this week's game is to get Jefferson to 1,000 yards. 100%. 100%. It's to get Harrison Smith an interception if you can, but you don't control that one. You control the 1,000 yards. I don't care if they have to call up Brooks Bollinger or Todd Bauman and have them come in and throw the ball to, I don't care if Carson Wentz has to come in a sling. He was able to do it, which is another reason to have skepticism about, just bringing in a regular backup again when it comes to JJ, is that Carson Wentz still had the biggest games passing. Did you know Carson Wentz has the 3 biggest passing games of the Minnesota Vikings 2025? Carson Wentz. Yikes. But yeah, I don't care who it takes. If Josh Freeman can still sling it, then bring him in. I mean, whoever it takes to get to 1,000 yards, I don't care. But that has been a journey. Aaron says one game is not going to make a difference with McCarthy, but agree with coach that he needs to be getting experience. Yeah. Experience is good. It's good to go out there and play football in a game that counts in the standings. But in my experience with these games, which unfortunately is more than I would like, it's not really a football game. I mean, it is, but it's not the same. They all know. Like, they know that this is not for anything. And especially if the other team's playing their backups, it's not even for a spoiler type of thing, like it was in 2018 with, Kirk and Adam Thielen fighting on the sideline. The Bears were enjoying that because that was a spoiler thing. But when they played the Bears in week, 17 or 18? Now I can't remember. Do we have a 17-game schedule yet in 2021? Maybe. I think so. Did we? Must be. I think we did. Anyway, that final week of Mike Zimmer against the Bears was just a zoo. It was just a circus. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous football. I think, what did Kirk in the second half threw like 350 yards or something? It was insane because everyone is like ready to go. So it's not a good way to judge someone, but it is football reps. Sean says, I want to see JJ. He needs to show me that he can play through injury and be smart about avoiding contact and doesn't get hurt again. Still won't stop me from going after Joe Burrow, though. Well, I don't think his ability to stop himself from getting injured starts this week. I think that's going to be a thing that just takes maturity in playing in the NFL, to be a little bit safer when you're out there scrambling and to learn to get rid of the football. That was the thing about the Giants game that just made me go, is this getting better or not? Because when he had the play where he took a sack down by the goal line, he passed up a pretty standard route combination at the goal line and then could have either checked it down or thrown it away and just took a big sack. It's like, that's what's going to get you hurt, man. And if you're Joe Burrow even, Burrow still gets hurt a bunch because he tries to do stuff like that, but you're not Joe Burrow when you do throw it. So prove he can play through injury. I don't know. I mean, this is a hand. So, I mean, I guess if it was the Super Bowl, but and I'm not a doctor when it comes to this, but it sort of stands to reason that you can't just use some little painkiller on a hand because you need to be throwing the ball. So I don't know if it works that way. It might be counterproductive to try to have him play through an injury in pain and then throw the ball badly. And what good does that do for anybody? So I don't know. I mean, prove he can play through it. I don't know. That's pretty tough. I think that JJ has played through injuries before, played through the ankle injury against Atlanta and kept grinding. I don't want to put it like that. And I don't think that it would do a whole lot to prove that he can start avoiding injuries today. That's something that's going to have to be a process for him. Reps is probably the best. Yeah. I mean, K-Skull says, he needs reps, but against scrubs. Yeah. I mean, it's better than nothing because this is the hard part of being an NFL quarterback is you get these opportunities and he got a half a season. It is a dead half a season, 8.5 games, half a year. I guess that would be, is that 8.5 plus? Yeah, 17. Right. So he got a half a season. anything you can get to get out there and throw real passes, because you go into the offseason and you're going to be working on mechanics. You're going to be throwing routes on air. Oh, great. Congratulations. Like, you threw routes on air. Does that really do a lot? Like, I don't know. I don't know that it does. And then you get a couple of OTAs, you get a couple of mini camps, and then you're playing again. So it happens really fast. Any opportunity you can get for real work, you should probably try to take advantage of it. Derek says Flores is better at his job than KOC at his. Well, the difference is obviously that there's a quarterback situation. The one thing about, right, when you're on defense, you don't have a quarterback who dictates so much of your success or failure. I looked this up the other day that Kyle Shanahan, who I think after the other night especially, we would all agree is unbelievable at his job. He's had multiple seasons where they finished worse than 20th offensively. He was with the Cleveland Browns. I think they were 25th or 27th. Well, why would that be? His quarterback wasn't good. And it happened twice in San Francisco that they were lower than 20th. Why did that happen? Because Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt and they were playing Nick Mullins for an entire season, and that's what happens. Also, I think, it's ludicrous to me. I've started just shutting off entirely social media when I get a chance to sit down and watch football games like I did this week on a Sunday, because I get real excited. Like, oh, I get to just sit here and watch the games, right? I'm not covering one. This is great. And not that I don't love covering the games, but you get that rare opportunity to put a dent in the couch. Like, I'm going to do it. And I've just turned off social media because every single game is, see, I told you this quarterback was actually good or bad. It's like every tweet. Who cares what you thought 5 years ago about whoever? But Brock Purdy, though, the guy's just really, really darn good at football. And he's perfect for Kyle Shanahan's offense. And I think we have to put draft stock away. Probably the minute the guy actually plays and looks good, it's time to put draft stock away. And I would say that for anybody who plays well. Malik Willis, look, he can play. You can see it. But the point being that he gets Brock Purdy, and he's had now multiple phenomenal offenses with Purdy. Jimmy Garoppolo was a good quarterback. He wasn't amazing. And when he got hurt, then it just fell off. But he was good, and he was a perfect fit for that offense, and they go to the Super Bowl, right? With Kevin O'Connell, what he's dealing with here is Sam Darnold is the quarterback, and they're a top 10 offense, even though they couldn't run the football for anything. And when Kirk is here, they're a good offense. And then when it's Dobbs, Mullins, Hall, JJ, Wentz, Brosmer, maybe Brett Rippon, it's not the same. You are just so locked into that. I will say, though, to Alec Lewis's thing about the DVOA and the difference between Flores' defense and O'Connell's offense, DVOA does not excuse you from the run game. Like sometimes, I feel like we've all been kind of critical about it forever, but it's a major factor that, and it's been better this year, but it has not been something that they could dominate with. It's not been something that they're a top 15 team with, top 10 team. And I think that it starts to show after a while the total impact of not being able to run the football that consistently well. And other teams who maybe don't have all the best offensive linemen, or maybe don't have all the best running back or, talent, they're able to do it. That's something that we've probably just gone past. Like, all right, that's just never going to be a thing. But if there was a year, it was going to be this year, and it wasn't still. So that is a major demerit there. Let's see. Iconic says, we've seen how bad McCarthy came out without practice in preseason. He needs all the games he can get. Fair enough. Edwin, do you think that a veteran quarterback would keep Beeflo in Minnesota if Flores stays? You think Hitman comes back in 2026? Hard to figure. Harrison Smith, never been a super predictable guy for me. I thought he was going to retire after 2023, so I wrote a big article sort of using all the data to show, and interviews with a couple different players and so forth that had played with him to try to prove, which is something I believe, which is that he should be in the Hall of Fame someday. And that was 2 years ago. And then last year, as he and I were walking out of Glendale together, and I made a comment to him about it and, just like, hey, thanks for everything, kind of thing. And he came back again. So I don't know. I thought he was going to retire for the last 2 years. Very possible that he comes back. It has a different feel this year, though. I will say that being around Harrison this year has had a different feel than it has in the past. Like, I think this is probably it. And I don't know if he would come back again for Brian Flores. It's so hard. I saw Jim Suhan wrote about this. Like, hey, bring him back, man. He's playing great. And like, hey, I'm not going to disagree. He's playing great, but it's so hard. It takes so much work to get ready for an NFL season and to be at this level. And especially as you get older and, accumulate more bumps and bruises and everything else. And there's also at some point, a guy might want to live his life. Like, he's got kids and all that sort of stuff. So, I don't know. It's there's a lot of factors that goes into it that's beyond just Brian Flores coming back. But that might be a thing. In terms of the veteran quarterback part of that, I mean, I wouldn't count it out. I would not count out that could be a factor. I mean, if I'm Brian Flores and I'm a free agent, like, wow, everybody wants me and I'm a free agent. This is great. I'm going to ask that question, right? I'm going to ask, like, do I have to drag you up and down the field again next year or what? Like, are you going to solve this problem or what? Because the Dallas Cowboys don't have to solve that problem. And, head coaching, if it's a head coaching job, you just have to take it. No matter who it is, you have to take it. There's only so many opportunities that you can ever get in a lifetime. You got to take those. But if there are lateral move chances for, I don't know, I threw out Baltimore and threw out, Dallas as something that's been reported. I got to hear what the plan is, because imagine what this defense would have been if all these guys, I mean, how about even someone like Dallas Turner, who had a pretty tough start to the season, in part because he's playing that Van Ginkel role, but also in other part because he's just not getting to rush the passer at all. He gets some opportunities recently to rush the passer, and there you go. He starts producing. I mean, Turner is in the top 20 in pass rush production rate by PFF, which is the pressure, or it's a hurry, a QB hit, or a sack, but it's weighted heavier towards sacks. He was in the top 20, and it hasn't really looked like that because he hasn't gotten that many opportunities, but that's per snap, right? So, Grenard, how many, he would have got more sacks. He would have actually gotten to take down the quarterback. All these guys, they would have gotten more interceptions and all that stuff had they gotten to play ahead. It's very hard to play defense from behind all the time like they were earlier this season. So if I'm him, I gotta know the plan, or I gotta be sold on, like, this is going to be okay with JJ McCarthy. And if it's not, here's who it's going to be. Because again, McCarthy has played one half of a season and been injured 4 different times. I mean, you've got to have somebody else. I think I'd be interested. I'd be asking that question. That's like if you're, house shopping and you won the lottery, like that show, Lottery Dream Home. It's kind of like that, right? Like, you can be picky. You could say, I don't want a deck like that because I have $1 million now. It's kind of like that. You can be as picky as you want. Let's see. Nick says, this is the wrong question. The real question is what teams would want Flores to go to. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Or what you mean, what teams we would want him to go to? I wouldn't think that he would go anywhere like in the division or anything. Let's see. Jim says we don't need one more game to evaluate McCarthy. We need a complete season, but we need stability at the position. Make a big time trade for a quarterback or go back to the draft. Interested in your ideas, of course. As you guys know, I'm always willing to, and we haven't done this in a little while, but I'm always willing to grade an idea. So if you've got an idea, I started yesterday during some of the games making a list of every possible name I could think of. And in my head, as I'm looking at them, I'm kind of grading the different ideas. So if you think, when you say make a trade, like, who are we talking about making a trade for other than Burrow? Burrow to me is still like a super long shot. Next year, maybe, but right now he doesn't have a whole lot of leverage in his contract. BM says we're getting Aaron Rodgers next year. I think Rodgers is going to retire. I mean, honestly, I think they're going to lose against Baltimore and then he'll retire. That's my guess, but I don't know. Somehow Tomlin always finds his way, into the postseason, but I don't know. They've lost the number of those win and you're in type games, and Rodgers just looked like, please don't hit me, Myles Garrett yesterday. I saw the kid who does the film watchers on Instagram and Twitter was going absolutely crazy at the tape of Aaron Rodgers. And I did think, if you missed the show yesterday, I brought this up, that Rodgers' performance yesterday was, to me, the reason that if you didn't want Rodgers, you were right yesterday. And I think you were right in total, because that's a 9-win type of team where Rodgers is just looking like he's doing whatever the heck he wants yesterday, just throwing fades down the sideline when he should be running the offense. Seems like he's just kind of doing whatever he wants out there, which would have driven Kevin O'Connell crazy. And at least we found out 8.5 games worth about JJ McCarthy. If McCarthy had sat on the bench all year long to have Aaron Rodgers get you to 9 wins, it would not have been worth it. And then go into the playoffs and get trucked by somebody, or, lose on the last day of the season, it would not have been worth it. And I think that's exactly what would have happened. I do not think that they're going to get Rodgers next year. I think that Rodgers is going to retire. That would be my guess. But he was on my list. Jim, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Thank you. Really appreciate that. That's a big one. Not necessary, but always appreciated. Thank you. Let's see. To the Mr. Mayor says, to the FanDuel question of the day, absolutely need to see JJ McCarthy play. Well, that was the FanDuel question was a little different, but I'll take that. Let's see. Absolutely need to see JJ McCarthy play, even if it means nothing. He needs to earn his place on the team. But that's the point, is that you can't earn your place on the team on Sunday. You just can't. It doesn't, there's no amount of numbers that he could put up that would make me care. And it's sad, because I'm going to go and I like football and I want to cover the game and I like covering games, and I won't get to cover another one until September. So, hey, drink it in. It's football. It's your last look at the 2025 team. So play your hearts out. But I think everybody wants to see McCarthy get reps and play well and those things, but you can't give me a stat line. I mean, 5 touchdowns and 400 yards. And I'm going to say, the other team's not playing. Like, they're just, what are you going to do? They're not running Jeff Hafley's defense. It's not Micah Parsons out there chasing you around. It's going to be backups for the most part. I'm assuming that, they're just trying to get healthy. They're just trying to bring everybody in the bus to the stadium and leave with everybody. That's their main goal. So it's very hard for me to say, like, I need to get another look at him. Let's see. Langston says, I don't think anyone in this chat has had a fracture before. Well, Langston, I was thinking about this today as Kevin O'Connell said that it's possible for him to play. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know about that. A fracture in your hand doesn't seem like something that's easy to just sort of, okay, the swelling went down, good to go. But I have never had a fracture in my hand either, so I can't say for sure. Let's see. Not sure how to say your name here. Starts with YA, so I'm going to call you Ya. Shut down JJ McCarthy. You don't want him to break a bone, then no offseason working on his footwork. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think that's very fair. Very fair take. It might be better for him to just get going on the offseason right now, because this is such an enormous offseason for JJ McCarthy. No matter who they bring in, unless it is Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray. I mean, even this is why I like the Geno Smith idea, and don't click off the video because you hate the Geno Smith idea. The reason I like it is because Geno sets a bar. He's been a starting quarterback, but he's not amazing. But if you have to play him, you could probably win with him here, not in, Las Vegas. But JJ McCarthy should be able to beat him out. That's the needle I'm looking to thread if I'm the Vikings, is someone who could win me games if I need them to, and someone who provides very good competition in camp for JJ McCarthy, but he should beat out. That's like the Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones thing. Like, Daniel Jones had won 3 of his last 20 games or something for the Giants. Like, he was a pro quarterback, but if you're making progress as Anthony Richardson, you should beat him out. And he didn't. And now, who knows where that goes. Let's see. Pie chart of these guys on the Vikings next year. Malik Willis, Mac Jones, Wentz, Richardson, Jones, Phillip Rivers. I assume you mean Daniel Jones. I'm not sure how to pie chart that one exactly. Maybe the ones that are serious, I would say I don't think Malik Willis has a very good chance of being here because he's going to be too expensive. I keep using this stat. It blows my mind. Justin Fields got 20 mil. If Justin Fields got 20 mil, then Malik Willis is getting a pretty hefty dollar because Justin Fields has never played good. Justin Fields has never played as good as Malik Willis did the other night. Not any game that I've watched him. Every time I've watched him, he's gets sacked 9 times by DJ Wanham. So I don't know. But Malik Willis to me is too expensive. Mac Jones is definitely a possibility. Carson Wentz is possible if they really like him. Richardson I could see, but do you want multiple project players that you're trying to teach? And I think it's very possible with Daniel Jones. In fact, I might put Daniel Jones as the most because if they fire Shane Steichen, remember Jim Irsay passed away. His daughters have taken things over there. They had one of the biggest meltdowns ever in NFL history this year. They could fire him and the next regime is probably going to be looking for their guy. They're not going to be looking at, hey, let's re-sign Daniel Jones. And with his injury, you're probably getting a discount, which, certainly makes you feel a little bit on the nervous side there. Derek says Lamar can't run anymore. The show is over. I mean, there's something wrong with him this year. I mean, I don't think it's a forever thing for Lamar, but this year, no question about it. Adrian with the Raiders and Flores, I think is very, very plausible because of the Tom Brady connection and just the desperation. Those are the two things that would have to come into play there. And the Raiders could either fire Carroll or they could just work it out that Flores is the DC for 1 year and then the head coach after that. Let's see. Iconic says the worst place to go and become a head coach is a team that is falling apart in every category. Well, that's what happens though. Like you very rarely just take over a team that, oh man, they're awesome. They're great on offense, defense. They got the best kicker, best punter, best return. Like then someone else has the job already most of the time. Anyway, so let me remind you real quick that FanDuel question of the day was 49ers are plus 900 to win the Super Bowl after the other night. That's the fourth best odds. And the Jaguars are plus 1300. These are the two teams that surprised me the most of where they are today. What team has been your biggest surprise? I will ask that to Brian Murphy and Manny Hill coming up here in just a second. We'll get those guys into the show and begin our roundtable. Just takes me a second to get those guys loaded up. So make sure you answer that FanDuel of the day question of the day, and we'll get into a conversation here and also continue to take your questions and comments. Murph, do you have me?
I do. Do you have me?
Oh, I do. You sound great. You look great. So let's continue with the Brian Flores discussion. Hi, Manny. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm always great when this works. Let's continue with the Brian Flores conversation. And there is a distinct Brian bias here from Murph. But Murph, do you think that the league finally decides this year, all right, it's time to put it aside. This guy is clearly one of the best in the world at what he does, and he needs to be a head coach? Or do you think that the owners remain, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, unhappy with Mr. Flores and are not interested in giving him a head coaching job because if you didn't catch it, Murph, Kevin O'Connell basically said, look, I really want him back and our dialogue has been great, but if he gets a head coaching opportunity, I mean, man, he's going to take it.
Yeah, I think he would. But as you mentioned at the top here, this litigation, which I haven't drilled into in a while, I believe it's in arbitration, is thorny. I mean, he essentially accused 4 different teams and the league as a whole of not hiring him or firing him because he was black. I mean, that's a pretty radioactive accusation to make. So essentially, this litigation is kind of putting the Rooney Rule and sham interviews on trial. So, and he's not the only plaintiff. I know Steve Wilkes, the former Carolina coach, is in there too, I believe. Then there's at least one other plaintiff. So it may not even be up to Flores if he wants to settle. It does bring up an interesting dynamic because I don't see the NFL or an NFL team, maybe other than the Raiders, because they love to go against the grain. It's in the Davis blood. But I think the NFL doesn't like to have pending litigation hanging over its head, specifically trying to resolve an issue that, if Flores does get back into the head coaching cycle, would essentially be facing sort of the same issues or conflicts that he had brought up. So I'm inclined to think that they would want to settle this litigation before a team does offer him a head coaching job. Now, that doesn't mean to say that if the Giants or say the Raiders, or if you want to spitball any other teams, are going to be desperate for a defensive mind maybe, and somebody that can come in and take over quickly. The owners may be behooved to if one of their own is convinced that Brian Flores is my guy and we need to end this so we can sign him and make peace, as it were. I think they would be inclined to maybe nudge their lawyers to get this thing done. The other question is, Brian Flores made a lot of really incendiary allegations and is sort of fighting for himself and other African-American coaches for lack of opportunity. How much does he want to stick with that? And how much is he going to wait out to get maybe meaningful change, if not his own compensation, into the hiring practices? So there's a lot to work through just to get him in a place where a team may say yes. That can all happen quickly, but this litigation's been going on for several years now. So it's not exactly in a position to react to the NFL hiring cycle, which is literally 48 hours after the last game, it seems like. So that, all of that being said, I think Flores is in a great position. He bet on himself by telling the Vikings, hey, just let me ride out my contract and we'll see where things are at in January. I mean, he may be looking to see where the Vikings quarterback situation comes up because he knows what a stress defense can look like with not just subpar, but historically bad quarterback play. Maybe he bets on himself a couple more years here, knowing he has an out every hiring cycle. Maybe he can leverage some more coin out of the Wilfs because he is arguably one of the best DCs in the league. So I envy where Brian Flores is right now, despite that kind of thorny litigation hanging out there.
So the last that I saw from this was that the NFL wanted to go to arbitration, which of course they would, and the courts decided that the lawsuit can go forward. So this could be continually caught up for quite some time. But Manny, all it takes is one. All it takes is, think about when we talk about breaking rank, the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to bring in Brian Flores as an assistant when his name was mud in the NFL. And then the Vikings sort of did the same thing as a DC, but I don't think they would have done it had he not already worked for the Steelers. Their head coaching position could be up in the air if they lose or even if they win and go to the playoffs and get immediately knocked out. Like, there's just been a lot of chatter about Mike Tomlin potentially taking a step back or taking a different job or something like that. So do we think that someone is willing, and I threw out the Browns as a team that did that before. The Browns decided to, do the crazy thing with Deshaun Watson with his contract, which no one else was willing to give any quarterback that much money. And the owners have, sort of tried to drag those quarterback contracts back down after Jimmy Haslam jacked them so far up. What is somebody asked earlier, like your percentage chance on this that he's back?
Back with the Vikings,
Yeah.
I think there's a decent chance. I would say about 50%. I think that's a pretty good chance just because I think the Vikings are in a position where they can't really let him go. It would be a huge blow, I think, to, certainly to the coaching staff, but also to the players in this defense that you've built now over the last few years that Brian Flores has been around. He's had a lot of input on the free agents that have been signed, the players that have been drafted on that side of the ball. I have to imagine if he does stay around, he's going to be wanting to look at adding another cornerback to the secondary that might be able to help sort of bolster that part of the unit. And I think the Vikings really feel like they need him. Now, money talks, opportunity talks, and if the Cowboys, I know that's a team that you've talked about quite a bit over the last few weeks as pertains to Brian Flores. If the Raiders want to go outside of the box with which to Murph's point, they kind of have a history of doing that. There's going to be suitors for Brian Flores because he's going to be a free agent. So it's going to be a lot easier to attain his services. But I think if you're the Vikings, I think you have to really try as hard as you can to bring him back. And maybe that includes, not only maybe boosting his salary, but maybe you add an associate head coach or assistant, top assistant head coach to his title. That might help, boost things for him as well. I know Kevin O'Connell, when he talked to you guys today, he kind of hinted at, hey, this guy's going to be a head coach again at some point. We're just going to try to keep him around as long as we can, as long as he wants to be here. So I think that helps their chances. The fact that it seems as though they really want him back, and they've been negotiating with him, I'd put it at about 50%. But again, if somebody else comes in with a sweeter offer, a sweeter pot, I would not be surprised if he takes that on and moves on.
The two different outcomes here for him leaving would feel very different. If he gets a head coaching job, then okay, congratulations, you earned it, man. Good job. And what else can you say? That, okay, is unfortunate that you're losing your defensive coordinator, but that's life in the NFL when you have a successful coach. If he just leaves for a different job that's a defensive coordinator, then you got to look around and go, hey, what the heck was that? Was it money? Was it opportunity? Was it quarterback stability? And the fact that, if you go run Dallas's defense, that you're going to score 450 points because their offense knows what it's doing. Would it be an indictment on how he feels about JJ McCarthy? I mean, there was reporting from Diana Rossini and some others that not everybody inside the building was comfortable with what they decided to do. And I'm not saying that it was certainly Brian Flores, but if I was in his seat going into this year, I would have been like, are we sure? Because Sam Darnold was really nice for my defense last year when he was scoring and getting us ahead in games, and then I could just blitz the heck out of everyone. So you wonder about that. And if you can pick whatever you want, I think everyone understands the value of what a quarterback does. And this was the year that I went, okay, look, we like to debate quarterback wins and all that, but we saw the real trickle down of not having quarterback play. It restricted what the defense could do so much throughout the season. This is a funny YouTube name. It's not the real Lee Steckel, but that's the name. Let's see. Dolphins wanted Sean Payton and Brady when they fired Flores. Flores then filed a lawsuit. The Raiders aren't hiring him. Do your homework. I don't see the connection really there with Brady's working for the Raiders, knows Flores through the New England Patriots. They wanted to hire Peyton and bring in Tom Brady and fired Brian Flores because of it. But I mean, I don't know that there's a connection there between those two exactly. I think what Tom Brady wants to do is win football games, and he will do anything to do it. And it's certainly not happening for the Las Vegas Raiders right now. Let's shift the conversation to JJ McCarthy because you mentioned Kevin O'Connell's comments earlier today, Manny. He did leave the door open for JJ McCarthy. I'm a little skeptical because hand fracture, it just doesn't scream to me plays next week. And even, there was a little extra time though, so maybe that helps since missing the last game. Murph, do you need to see JJ McCarthy is part of the question. And then the other part is what can we take out of it for JJ McCarthy if he were to play against the Packers?
I don't believe I need to see this game, this start, to make my final analysis on JJ McCarthy this year. It may leave you with a better taste going into the offseason, depending on how he performs, but I think we got a pretty good sample size. Well, it's a limited sample size, but what is limited is telling. So no, I don't feel like this is critical. If he did play, though, I would like to know what it's like when he's playing, without a lot of comfort. If he's playing hurt or injured, as it were. If this game meant something, would he be in the lineup? Would the equation be different? Probably. But how effective would he be? I mean, he wasn't that effective for long stretches with a healthy throwing hand. So, and it seemed obvious on the sack that he took, the strip sack in New York, his final snap of that game and maybe the season, seemed like he had zero ability to grip the football. Now that may change in 10 days, yes, but I just feel like I don't feel like we need to see him. I think if he wants to push through and, maybe build his credibility up a little bit in the locker room with the fan base, toughing it out, as it were, although that sounds very, kind of 18th century and maybe not that progressive. But there are some things that, you're going to have to play when you're not feeling the best. You're going to have to play with broken bones or fractures. Maybe again, not to your throwing hand. I'd like to see what he's doing, how he can manage himself in a game plan when he's not 100%. But 50% of a quarterback or 50% of a struggling quarterback probably amounts to 5% productivity. So I'm going to rely on them to make it worth the peak this week. I think they're going to just let this go to the end of the week. I don't think it harms him either way, whether he plays or not, at least his reputation or his sample size and what we can bring into the offseason. But I'd like to know what he's like uncomfortable in the pocket. I mean, physically uncomfortable as opposed to maybe mentally uncomfortable. I don't know what the value is in that. And again, it depends on how bad his hand really is hurt.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you get a whole lot out of someone if he can't throw the ball well because he can't grip it and he has a bad game. Then we're going to be like, oh, well, that was worth it. Right. Or I don't look, I'm a scientist. I don't know if you can aggravate a fracture in your hand, but if you do, then you're talking about setting back an offseason potentially. That's something that I wouldn't really want. But I also think at the same time, like, you can't put somebody in bubble wrap who's a quarterback. I mean, if the quarterback can play, then he should play. That's where I'm at with it, is if he can hold the ball well enough to throw it, and if it does have some pain involved, but you got to fight through it, okay. But if it makes it so he can't throw the ball effectively, well, then we're just not really achieving a whole lot. You're looking at a defense, I guess, every play, and then what? Just throwing it into the stands? I mean, throwing has already been tough enough for JJ McCarthy. I don't know that he needs to do it banged up. But let's say that he does play, Manny. What do you think? What would you make of any type of performance from him week 18?
Well, I think when you factor in the Packers don't really have a lot to play for in this game, their spot in the playoffs is already solidified and secured. So winning or losing doesn't matter for them. So it makes all the sense in the world for them to rest all of their players. I can't even imagine we would see Malik Willis in this game for them. And he is like their literal backup. And I can't imagine him even playing in the game. So there's going to be opportunities for McCarthy to go out and play well if he's going to be playing up against second and third stringers on the Packers defense. The problem is if he can't grip a football because his hand is hurting, or, KOC said today, like there's still some swelling in his hand, that's a problem, and that's going to affect how he's going to play. So if his number one asset, his right hand, is not where it should be, how are you really even going to have any idea of what he really looks like? And I don't know about you guys. I'm kind of at the point now where I am over all of the explanations and excuses for JJ McCarthy over the course of this season. We need to see this kid play at 100% with the situation being perfect for him to see if he can actually really do this. Because it seems like whenever something goes wrong or whenever he doesn't play as well, there's always an explanation for it. It's always, this tackle was out, or, the defense didn't give him enough of an opportunity, or, he got injured and there's been so much, he hasn't been able to have any continuity, and the KOC needs to dummy down the system. There's been all of these explanations for why he doesn't play well. And I feel like if you throw him out there in this game and he throws 3 interceptions because he can't grip the football, that's all we're going to talk about, as to why he didn't play well. I'm over that. I just want to see this guy probably just shut it down for this last game, go into the offseason, get healthy, go through the OTAs, go through all the off-season stuff that he needs to do to get himself right, another full off-season for him. And then that way we can go into 2026. If you bring in somebody to compete with him, he's going to have an opportunity to solidify this spot. And if he doesn't do it, then the Vikings will have their answers.
So I want to present you guys. I got to pull it up here because it's an article I'm starting to work on. I want to present you guys with 3 different quarterback ideas, and they're of 3 different levels of quarterback. There's like the starter level, the backup level, and then the true backup level. You'll know what I mean when I give you the ideas. And I want you guys to tell me which one of these you like the most. Okay. So the case for a completely different starter for the Minnesota Vikings in 2026 is Kyler Murray. They are going to get rid of him. I don't think that anyone will trade for a quarterback that they know a team is moving on from. And my evidence would be Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold. They tried to trade him at the combine last year. I heard that they were talking to other teams or hoping to have other teams approach them about trading for Sam Darnold. And they were like, don't you have to let him go? Isn't that what you guys are doing over there? So everybody knew what they were doing, and they just had to let Sam Darnold go and get the comp pick, right? I think the same thing is going to happen with Kyler Murray. I don't think anyone's trading assets for someone that they know the team is completely done with. So let's say that's the first level of this is get Kyler Murray. He's your starting quarterback for next year. And you may not like him, and I agree with a lot of the criticisms of Kyler Murray, but he has won games in the NFL. Right? He has been to the playoffs. He has put up big numbers. He threw 100 and something passes to DeAndre Hopkins. We would not be sitting here next year if he played for the Vikings and saying, oh, let's get Justin Jefferson to 1,000 yards. Okay. I promise you he would get to 1,000 yards with Kyler Murray. So that's idea number 1. The next level idea is Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo is a veteran quarterback who's been with the Rams the last couple years, similar offense. And he's a backup like these days. He is not a starting quarterback in the NFL, but he has proven that under the right circumstances with San Francisco, he can win games. He would present to you a pretty good baseline for JJ McCarthy. If he can't beat out Jimmy Garoppolo, then you know it's over. And if Jimmy has to start, then you'll probably win some games with him in KOC's offense. He was with the Raiders and that was horrendous, but he could still probably win some games. The next one down is Gardner Minshew. Just he won 8 games that one time. He's a real backup quarterback. So you know exactly what Gardner Minshew is. So Murph, your 3 levels are Kyler Murray, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Gardner Minshew. Which one of those options would you most prefer for the Vikings 2026?
I would, in a vacuum, I would prefer Kyler Murray because you mentioned that, just the pure arm strength, the production, what he's been able to do with an elite level receiver, his ability to make things out of the pocket. All of that being said, yeah, that would be great. 2 things though. He's got a ton of baggage coming with him. And I'm not sure what is the dynamic going to be between Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy. Who is number 1? Who's beating out who? And that's a really dicey scenario to get into.
In this scenario, Murray's your quarterback. In this scenario, like there's not a competition.
Oh, there's no competition.
Garoppolo's competition. Minshew is. You see the game? Like we've got you're replacing him. So it's not so much about Kyler exactly, but it's the Kyler quarterback. Like, of course, there's going to be stuff that is wrong with whatever quarterback is available, who's the starter. But I just mean the 3 levels are completely replace him, have him compete with somebody, and then have him be the guy and he's got a regular backup.
No, I think the middle option then with Garoppolo, which I kind of liked anyway before I went down the Murray rabbit hole. I like the idea of having a steady presence here that can step in and, if need be, give you 4 to 6 quality starts. Maybe that involves, 3 to 4 wins. Carson Wentz, not as beat up. It's sort of this version of he may need to be in there. And I would trust Garoppolo, knowing his role, knowing the situation he's coming in, knowing where he's at in his career. He's been around a lot of quality people and a lot of quality quarterbacks and a lot of quality offensive folks, notwithstanding maybe the Raiders. But I just feel like that's probably the best case scenario where you do have a safety valve, you have a safety net that you didn't have this year. And if this is going to be a run back or a similar run back of a $300 million win now roster, you have to have somebody in place in case disaster strikes. And you can worry about what it's going to do to McCarthy later, because as you said, if you can't beat out Jimmy Garoppolo, then you didn't deserve to be a top 10 pick. And that's a whole other conversation. And, deep six that has to happen from a roster standpoint, philosophical standpoint. And who knows, O'Connell may not even be around in 2027 to kind of clean up that mess. So I think that's sort of the safest, maybe most efficient way, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to compete week to week with, Caleb Williams and Jared Goff and Jordan Love, or, Willis is probably gone, but it seems like everybody in the division has their quarterback situation not just figured out, but on a rocket ship, or at least, a proven place of comfort. If the Vikings are continuing to scramble around with that, handing it to him and saying Minshew's your backup is really just asking for a repeat of what happened this year, which is he's going to coast into the job and really not be pushed. So I'd love to see, the fireworks with Murray would be interesting. And I that's going to be a hell of a pitch to make. And then again, you're going to have to say, thanks, JJ, we'll get back to you later. That's a thorny issue to deal with. But, if we learned anything this year, I don't think he's entitled to much anymore.
Manny, where would you stand on that list?
I would stand. So if we're talking about just like the tiers, right? We're not talking about Jimmy Garoppolo specifically, but somebody in that same.
The reason I use the examples is to sort of like solidify in everyone's mind exactly what I mean. I mean, there's multiple. Right. So I made a list of 5, 6, 7 guys like this. So Jacoby Brissett, Kenny Pickett, Tyrod Taylor, those are your true backups. And the Garoppolo types include Flacco, Mariota, Tyler Huntley, Mitch Trubisky, Davis Mills. Like these guys could actually be starters or have been starters in the league before and won games.
Phillip Rivers?
Yeah. I did mention that if they need to sign Todd Bauman to get Jefferson to 1,000 yards, then go do it. Buffalo, Minnesota, right? Is that where he's from? So you get what I'm saying. Like we don't have to pick apart each one of those guys specifically, but the level.
Yeah, I would probably go on that sort of that mid-tier Garoppolo category for me, just because I think at the very least at that point, you bring in somebody like that, you bring him in to compete with JJ McCarthy, and you're telling JJ McCarthy, hey, dude, we're giving you an opportunity here to grab this position by the horns and run with it. And if you can't do it, then we got to move on. I think the Kyler Murray level is, I think if you bring in a Kyler Murray or somebody like that, I think you're basically already indicating you're done with JJ McCarthy at that point. You can't go back to him after that. So I still, because the McCarthy dynamic is kind of still up in the air, so to speak, I like the idea of bringing in sort of that mid-tier Garoppolo type of guy to compete with him so that you can really have an idea of what you have in JJ McCarthy. And if he gets beat out in camp, then that means you have your answer and you're going to be looking at trying to get another quarterback for 2027. It does get dicey, though, because if that happens and McCarthy gets beat out, you're likely probably at best, having another season like you had this year.
Yep.
And what does that mean now for Kevin O'Connell and the rest of the coaching staff? And how are the Wilfs going to feel about that? Because I imagine you missed the playoffs after going 8-9 or 9-8 for a second straight year. They're not going to be happy about that.
So these last couple of weeks, McCarthy getting hurt again, and then me watching the Bears and the 49ers play, I think I've been moved more to, if you can get a real starting quarterback, then do it. Whether it's Kyler or, Geno Smith or whoever it might be, then you probably should. Because when you look at the final numbers and the final number of injuries, this is really reminiscent of a lot of quarterbacks who teams have moved on from, including someone like Anthony Richardson, but I mentioned like a Blaine Gabbert, like that kind of level, that this is not acceptable quarterback play. It's not anywhere close. And I get all the excuses. I know them. I've waded my way through those waters all year long of like, what's an explanation? What's an excuse for JJ McCarthy? But 8.5 games and 34th out of 35 in expected points added. I brought up the stat earlier, guys, that, if the Vikings had replacement level quarterback play, they'd have a plus 44, point differential, which would have them in the playoffs. I mean, replacement level. I'm talking about the 29th best quarterback not 29th, but like 20th best quarterback in the league is replacement level. And you're so far away from that even though there was progress, it wasn't a light came on and the heavens opened up and went, oh, McCarthy, you are now flawed. Have you looked at the final statistics for the Cowboys defense? The quarterbacks have 109 quarterback rating this season against the Cowboys defense. That's what the MVP of the league is going to have. And they're doing that every single week. So there's not much to me that says, oh, you have to go forward with that. And the inability to stay healthy. And then I'm watching Caleb Williams play and I'm like, okay, good luck beating that. How much progress you'd have to make. It is massive. It is massive. It's not like, he just gets to get a little better at this, that, and the other thing. It's not a leap. It is did you ever watch, Murph, you may have seen Evel Knievel, but I grew up seeing Robbie Knievel when he jumped over the Grand Canyon. Like that's the leap we're talking about to get to playing like what Caleb Williams was the other night, or what Jared Goff has done in his past, or even Jordan Love. And these are the guys that you have to beat. And if Brian Flores leaves, you're going to have a real offense to get to 9 wins next year, not this, dumbed down offense that you survived against 3 horrible teams. So if this is the final picture with McCarthy, which it is because this is a preseason game, so this is the final picture. I just find that here's the way I started thinking about it. We have treated the franchise as if they are named the Minnesota McCarthys over the last 2 years. And last year, even when Sam Darnold was doing awesome, they were still the Minnesota McCarthys. That's all we heard about is wait till JJ McCarthy gets here. And I am done calling them that, treating them that way. Like the whole franchise just revolves around everything that he needs laid out for him, whether it's his footwork or whether it's whatever, staying healthy, all that sort of stuff. This is the Minnesota Vikings franchise who needs a quarterback who can get them into the postseason next year, period. And if that's not McCarthy, then it needs to be someone who's done it before. I wanted to ask you guys both about the Green Bay Packers. And I know that's harsh, by the way. And I know it's not a fair world. It's not. But I was watching Alex Smith talk to Brock Purdy yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw that on ESPN's Countdown shows. Great conversation. Yeah. Alex Smith said that he couldn't throw with anticipation for the first 5 years of his career because he was marveling at Brock Purdy's ability to do it. Purdy, who played 5 or 6 years in college, by the way. And he was like, man, I like what you can do with your anticipation. I couldn't do it for years. And I'm like, that's my comp for JJ McCarthy. I think he could be a really good quarterback in the league. I don't know that he could do it next year and compete for these teams, with these teams in the North.
And that was Alex Smith's 3rd head coach.
Right.
By the time he figured it out, it was Jim Harbaugh because he had gone through Mike Nolan and Mike Singletary before that.
Right. Exactly. I got an ad read I want to give you. Then I want to talk about the Packers. But our friends at ZipRecruiter, let me tell you about them. As you guys know, Purple Insider is always growing and changing, so we're always looking to take steps forward in 2026, and I'm lucky to have the great crew like these gentlemen here. But as a business owner, I'm aware of the challenges of trying to find quality people like Murph and Manny to add to the roster. If you are hiring for your company, then let me give you a little advice. Check out ZipRecruiter. With new goals in 2026, you may be looking to add to your squad as well. And thankfully, there's a place you can go that can conquer these challenges and achieve your hiring goals. That's ZipRecruiter. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter has matching technology that works fast and helps you find top talent. And you can go find out right away how many job seekers are in your area that are qualified for your role. So let ZipRecruiter help you find the best people for all of your roles. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to this exclusive web address, ziprecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Murph, are the Green Bay Packers not good enough to compete for a Super Bowl
this season? Yeah, I'm going to say that. Yeah, I'm going to say that. Well, I mean, they've already lost Micah Parsons. Jordan Love was banged up. They don't seem to. I mean, now granted, Derrick Henry's a future Hall of Famer, but they let a desperate team come into Lambeau on prime time and he rolled them up for 200 yards. I don't feel like they are productive, but they can't win. It seems like, I mean, you tell me where they rank. They always seem to be chewing up yards and making things difficult for other teams and yet not coming away with victories when they should. This is just kind of my cursory look at them. So no, I don't feel that they are I mean, if you're only going to make the playoffs, depending on this week's outcome, by a half game over the Vikings because of that tie in Dallas in October or September, whenever that was, when you 48-45 circus act or whatever that was, if that's your margin, then I don't see you in a, stacked NFC, cutting a blue streak through, January right now.
Who would have ever thought that the Vikings game in Lambeau would have had these ramifications? Not me at the time, I can tell you that. Yeah, Murph, they're just a different team without Micah Parsons. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
They can do so many different things. They have had so many injuries. Devontae Wyatt, they lose Nate Hobbs the other day. They're down to, when I was watching the game and I think they said, well, Bo Melton is down at corner. And I was like, the guy who used to be the receiver is now an injured corner. Like, they're at a lower level at corner than a guy who used to be a wide receiver, like just last year. So they are
between them and the Lions. I mean, their secondaries are just ravaged.
Right. These guys are so banged up that it's never talked about with the Philadelphia Eagles last year that they were the healthiest team in the NFL when they went to the Super Bowl. Their offensive line, their entire defense, I think one player was on IR, which is insane and impossible. I think injuries have taken their toll, but Manny, I also think there's something a little bigger to this. And I follow a lot of Packers reporters and writers and, commentators, and the whole thing of like, they've only made the playoffs since with the 7 seed, and the 7 seed didn't even used to exist. So they would have just been missing the playoffs previously. They are who exactly we thought they were going into this year, which is, they got Parsons. So that changed everything, but we thought, well, it's a pretty good team that could probably be a 7 seed. And that's exactly where they've ended up. And is there a way out of that for them? It feels like, yeah, the injuries have piled up, but this is kind of who they are with Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love right now.
Yeah, I remember you asked me about the Packers. I don't know if it was leading up to that game at Lambeau or what, but I remember we were talking about what they could be, as far as, can they make a run to the Super Bowl? How much damage can they do in the playoffs? And I kind of, at that time, I remember kind of feeling like, yeah, they're a good team and they'll be there, but how much can they actually do? How much can they set themselves up for? Can they get a good enough record to where they have home field advantage? They win the division, they have home field advantage at Lambeau in January. But we've seen even in the past when Aaron Rodgers was the MVP of the league, where they can be had at Lambeau Field. So even that isn't the kind of advantage that it once was many, many years ago, many decades ago. Yeah, they just feel like that team that, hey, they'll get into the playoffs, and if the quarterback is really on a hot streak, maybe they can go on a run. But if he's not, they're going to end up on the road playing somebody, and if the team that they're going up against is better than them, then they're just going to lose. They're just not. It just feels like they're really good, but they don't quite have enough. Maybe having a healthy Micah Parsons would be the difference there, but obviously this year they don't have him. So they're kind of stuck where they are, and if they have to play the Bears again, or if they have to go to Philadelphia, depending on how that number 2 seed shapes out, I don't think that they're going to have much of a chance.
And, last year they sort of in the offseason showed all the signs of a desperate team. Now, getting Parsons is different. If you get a chance to get Micah Parsons, then you trade what it takes because that guy is a top 5 player, non-quarterback in the NFL. But when they drafted Matthew Golden, who to me was an overrated prospect because of his 40 time. And I'm not a draft analyst, but I thought Luther Burden was the more complete player, and it's turned out to be that way. But they were sort of drafting someone to save the family, like having the kid to save the family. Like we need a wide receiver to save this offense. So we're going to draft him. And then the guy's not really ready and he's just okay. And he didn't do that. And their offense is that way. And every year with Jordan Love, if he's hitting deep shots, then okay, wow, they're on a hot streak. He's playing like an MVP and then people talk about it. But it almost reminds me of Kirk Tober a little bit, where every year there would be this run where he would get hot and it'd be great. And then at the end you'd go, but there were too many games. And this is how I started thinking of Kirk and other quarterbacks is, well, how many games does this guy really bring it out of 17? And the answer is probably like 10 for Jordan Love, which is very good and puts you in the conversation every year. But it's not that like Josh Allen's like bringing it 14 out of 17 times. And there's just a slight difference there between the good and the great. And if you don't have the great, you better have a great team, and their team is just good. I wouldn't fire LaFleur or do anything stupid or crazy, but they are going to look like a stuck mid-ish type team. This also puts the emphasis back on the Vikings having real quarterback play next year, because the Lions, they're going to try their best, but they've got some restrictions. The Packers, the path is pretty tricky there with Jordan Love making as much as he's making. I'm seeing Packers people talking about, hey, trade Jordan Love and keep Malik Willis. Like that's how concerned. I know that's crazy town, but like that's how concerned they are about the contract for him. And what does that sound like? It sounds like 2019 Kirk Cousins, Minnesota Vikings, a very good team that probably can't get over the hump. I want to ask you guys also, before we get to, looking at some things from around the league and what we've got, a very exciting week 18 coming up, is people start to form their New Year's resolutions right around now. But in order to form a resolution, what do you have to do first? You have to look in the mirror. You have to say, what do I need? I bought a rowing machine. That's what I need. I need to get more, I need to get more jacked in 2026. That's what I need. That's my resolution. But I wouldn't think that unless I looked in the mirror and said, yeah, it's not good enough. What do you guys think the Vikings should most be looking in the mirror at when they make their front office and coaching resolutions for 2026, which, honestly could already start happening, but will definitely start happening the minute that week 18 is over? Those meetings will begin on their 2026 plans. So Murph, what should they have learned by looking in the mirror that should guide them into next year?
Never go into a season with an unproven quarterback on a $300 million win now roster without a backup quarterback. And maybe acknowledge we're not the smartest guys in the room. And I think this was a humbling experience for Kevin O'Connell. And I think he's responded in a lot of ways pretty well. It may all be, hot air because, winning 5 games in a row when you've been eliminated from the playoffs really doesn't, carry a lot of weight in the grand scheme. But I would say, I think they clearly they overestimated what McCarthy could do when handed the reins. But I think what really they underestimated was his ability to adapt to what O'Connell, getting him to adapt to what he wanted the offense to look like, as opposed to maybe adapting more to McCarthy and bringing him along the way. I think there was a sense of, we'll just plug and play. We'll get him through his off season. He'll be healthy. We're going to make up lost time for what we lost in 2024. Sam Darnold's great, but I schemed open some of these receivers. I got Jefferson down the field. I got the pass protection. I feel like O'Connell did his hardest job of coaching when he realized his prodigy wasn't what he thought it was. And I think that really stung, and I think it really caused him to look inward And when they were kind of wrapping McCarthy in bubble wrap and talking about all of his mechanics and what they can do to make it better, I think what O'Connell was doing in a lot of ways was also convincing himself that this is still something that can be worked with, that McCarthy's still a commodity that can be shaped and molded into something that I can work with, but he's not there yet. And I think O'Connell realized that kind of like we did in real time, shockingly, and why they didn't see this coming. Maybe, that's what they need to look in the mirror for, is how did we not anticipate, not the historically bad play, but how did we not anticipate McCarthy not being ready for the moment, both physically and skill set wise?
What do you think, Manny?
Well, to kind of piggyback off of what Murph was just talking about, I think the thing that they should have learned is don't base what you're going to do in your next offseason off of the last couple of games of the previous season, because that's basically the reason why Sam Darnold is not here. They looked at Week 18 against Detroit last year, wild card weekend against the Los Angeles Rams in Glendale in the playoffs, and they judged everything that they were going to do at the quarterback position off of those two games. And they completely ignored the 4,300 yards, the 35 touchdowns, the 14 wins. They kind of said all of that stuff didn't matter. What we saw in Detroit in Week 18 and in Glendale in the wild card round is going to decide what we do at quarterback. Don't make that same mistake again. And I'm talking about, rather it's great and amazing and incredible if JJ McCarthy throws for 400 yards on Sunday, it doesn't mean a damn thing. And you still have to go into this offseason with some questions and needing to see more out of this quarterback if you're going to stick with him. Now, if you have decided already and you want to move on, go to Kyler Murray route, that's fine. But if you're going to stick with this kid, don't just use 400 yards or whatever, a great performance against the Packers in a meaningless game in Week 18 as a barometer for what you're going to do at the quarterback position next offseason.
I tend to say Kyler Murray a lot because I think he's the best, but maybe I should say Daniel Jones because people just don't like Kyler Murray. I mean, I think if, Kyler is always a controversial player because he's hot and cold and he's short and he has to run around and so forth. And he has 400-yard games and he has 100-yard games. And he's probably one of the more frustrating quarterbacks of the last 10 years. Because if you see him at his best, you think, how has anyone ever stopped this person ever? And if you see him at his worst, you never want to watch football again. So like Daniel Jones is probably a better example of and the Kyler thing adds layers to it of like, how's he going to fit and can he play with KOC? But like Daniel Jones would be you're bringing him in to start after what he did with the Indianapolis Colts. I think also, Manny, what you're referring to is not just Week 18 if he plays. It's weeks before this of against Dallas, against Washington, you'd be saying, what you're saying, don't use those games, use the bigger sample. And the bigger sample is that's some of the worst quarterback play in the entire NFL this year. I would say that the rules apply to you, that there are rules in the NFL. Like nobody knows which quarterbacks are going to work out. Kyle Shanahan's over there on the sideline drawing up plays, and Brock Purdy is making him look beautiful the other night. And this guy was their 7th round draft pick. Let me tell you what, he's the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. If anybody knew that that's what he was going to be, but instead they traded 1st round draft picks to get a guy who stunk and has still never started for anybody. So if if the rules apply to Kyle, then the rules apply to you. And the other thing too, is that the laws of efficiency, which is the money that you spend if you go into free agency. And we liked a lot of the moves in the offseason. And we said that, hey, if McCarthy works out, these are all going to look a lot better. And that remains true. We'd be saying Javon Hargrave was a fine move if McCarthy was great this year, for sure. But in the light of day, there's a lot of these moves that like Will Fries at 17 mil versus several other free agents that cost a third of that. It was not an efficient offseason. And you can't just throw out efficiency because, it's time to win. And let's just do stupid stuff that does not make sense on paper. and then you get burned by it and you go, oh, well, I guess it was bad luck. Well, it wasn't, because you did suboptimal stuff and then it came back to bite you. So the rules apply to you. And as you go into free agency and as you go into these decisions in the future, well, you got to remember that if you keep doing suboptimal stuff, it will get you. And if you keep, trading away every draft pick, if you sign players that ruin comp picks, it will come back to haunt you. And it has for the Minnesota Vikings this year. Fellas, I asked the FanDuel question of the day earlier, which was the 49ers are currently plus 900 to win the Super Bowl on FanDuel. That is the fourth best odds in the NFL. The Jaguars are plus 1,300. These are the two teams that are the biggest surprises to me to be in the Super Bowl running. I am curious about your guys' biggest surprise teams of the 2025 National Football League season. Whoever's got the answer, just feel free to jump right in.
I got two on either end of the spectrum. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't think anybody expected them to be in the middle of this conversation. I know Trevor Lawrence had his moments a couple of years ago, put a scare into the Chiefs and, kind of were making hay, and everybody thought that's the AFC team on the rise. Doug Peterson gets fired. Lawrence is banged up. It's a mess. They're starting over, but that defense and the way they've been able to kind of fly under the radar a bit and kind of annoy teams. And look, I'm not a huge fan of Jacksonville. I visited there last year. It's definitely a small market.
Yeah.
It's definitely the smallest market in the NFL.
Yeah.
And for Coach Cohen to kind of not be, or to be offended by that and actually use that as motivation, I kind of find that, I thought that was kind of cool. There's a first year coach that just doesn't care. He doesn't care about, anybody else's reputation. He doesn't care about kind of towing the line, as it were. I just like the idea that they're coming in and with the AFC being sort of so wide open, with the Chiefs out and the Ravens, again, my other surprise team that they're even clawing here to get in was a real surprise. We thought, with Lamar Jackson, that they would be an AFC contender. Somehow Pittsburgh loses to Cleveland and we get a winner take all game Sunday, which is great. But those are my two surprises, that Baltimore is scrambling to get in and Jacksonville seems primed to be the big upset driver this offseason or this postseason.
What do you got, Manny?
I'm going to go with my biggest surprise. I'm going to go with New England.
Yeah.
Just because I thought they would be better, than what they were last year. They were really bad last year. And I think we're seeing that coaching had a lot to do with that. I hate to say that about a former Tennessee Vol, Gerard Mayo. Just didn't work out for him.
He wasn't
last
ready.
Year. He wasn't ready for the job. And Mike Vrabel, for sure, though, was ready for this job because this guy does this, and he's done this before. He's did a great job in Tennessee, and things kind of fizzled out there. It was time for him to kind of move on, I think, and we can see where that organization is right now. It was a good choice by him to be able to get out of there. But I did not expect for them to be this good. And Drake May, the leap that he has taken to go from being, a promising rookie who showed some signs last year to an MVP candidate, a leading MVP candidate the next year is really, really remarkable. I know people are going to knock the schedule and all they playing a last place schedule, but I don't think they should have to apologize for that. Their point differential is 142. They're 13-3. They've won that division now. They're set up to be really good, I think, for a long time now too, because like I said before, Mike Vrabel can coach. He's done a great job. So New England's kind of the number one surprise for me, just because I didn't think that they would be this good. I thought maybe like 10 wins and sneaking into the playoffs might be kind of the peak for them, but they've blown that out of the water. The other surprise I'll say is Chicago. I thought Chicago would be, again, another team. I thought they'd be better, but I didn't think that they would. I didn't think they would win this division. I thought it was going to be Detroit or Green Bay
for sure,
and maybe the Vikings if things went right for them. But the Bears have won that division, and now if Caleb Williams keeps playing like this, they're not going to go away, man. They're going to be around for a long, long, long time, and that's going to be frustrating for Vikings fans.
I think the same thing about Chicago and New England. I mean, I saw New England in the joint practices, and I remember they started out a little bit rocky this season. And I texted my friend
Lost to
Chad.
the Raiders.
Yeah,
week 1.
that's right. That's right. I texted Chad Graff, who covers the Patriots for The Athletic and used to be here. And I texted him and I was like, are they going to do like a Jets Sam Darnold where the team just is so inept and the guy's actually good? And then 5 years from now, and that's how it felt in week 2 or 3. And now they've got a chance to go chase a Super Bowl. And after Chicago blew it to the Vikings and then got run out of the building in Detroit, who wasn't thinking, okay, it's just the more of the same from the Chicago Bears? And then a lot of things have had to go right for them to be in this position. But recently, if you're going toe-to-toe with the Packers, you're going toe-to-toe with the San Francisco 49ers in a game like that, and the weapons they have, I'll say also that, Colston Loveland, when he got drafted by the Bears on draft night, and I will still stick with this, that drafting tight ends to me that high is a little sus, just because the gap between them from tight end to tight end isn't that big. But he's been a revelation for them. Burden's been great for them. Their offensive line, everything they did there just hit on the offensive line. And if they keep that unit together, Ben Johnson knows what the heck to do with it. And Caleb just keeps getting better and better. Caleb Williams, we talk about McCarthy and the Josh Allen arc. Caleb Williams has the Josh Allen arc, and he has the Josh Allen talent, which I don't think JJ McCarthy has. So that should be really scary to everybody in the National Football League, that if he gets a little more accurate, then my goodness. So yeah, I agree with some of those picks. Last thing is next weekend. Let me see what the odds are here. The San Francisco 49ers host the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are 1.5 point favorites on FanDuel for the NFC. And I mean, Sam Darnold, how many games? So you have to go 17-0 to get the number 1 seed locked in. What incredible drama this is. 2 great franchises, 2 great teams. And I cannot wait for this battle. The best offense, the best defense. And we all know what's going to happen with Sam Darnold is that this will turn into another narrative game. It's really bizarre to me, guys, that Justin Herbert can score 16 points in a loss and be widely celebrated. But Sam Darnold, it's always the next game that is proof that he is this or he is that. I love this game for the drama. I love it for Sam that he's in this game, and for the Seahawks organization that other teams didn't make offers to Sam Darnold. They did, and he's put them in this position. The Seahawks have scored the most points in franchise history with him at the helm, which is another proof of him being a top quarterback. But I'm gonna try, guys, to not let the world ruin this for how cool this is. Seahawks and 49ers. Remember that rivalry. Remember like Richard Sherman and Michael Crabtree and Harbaugh and Carroll going at it. And now they're back doing this. I just couldn't. These coaches are great. They are 2 awesome, awesome coaches. And I just cannot wait for this football game. What do you think happens, Murph? Seahawks and 49ers. The game. I don't know. This is the game of the year for me, for sure.
I'm going to give the 49ers an edge just because I feel like they've got a little bit more of the hard edge experience. I like the idea that they're at home. I like the idea that they're set up to basically run the table and go to the Super Bowl at home. And wouldn't that be something to see?
Yeah.
But I don't want what happens to define Sam Darnold. The guy's won 27 games in the last 2 seasons. 27.
Right.
And I know it's easy to say, well, he hasn't won the ones that mattered. Well, yeah, but I'm telling you right now, how does that 8.5 game JJ McCarthy experiment feel? Darnold is not going to lose this game. I think San Francisco will win it, but I think Darnold has established himself as a big arm, big time quarterback. Now, it's not like the Seahawks aren't going to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's not going to have a chance to redeem himself. I mean, we said that going into Glendale. I don't feel like this game Sunday should define Sam Darnold. Unfortunately, it will, because whether he wins or loses, he's still a 27-win quarterback the last 2 seasons with the statistics to back it up. And There's not a single person I've heard say a negative word about Darnold.
Yep.
Both in Minnesota, both in Seattle, in San Francisco, in Carolina, in New York, despite everything he's gone through. So if you're really hoping to tear down Sam Darnold to make yourself feel better for an 8-9/9-8 season, that says a little bit more about you than it does Sam Darnold.
Well, also think of it this way too. So let's put aside last year with Sam Darnold, those 2 games, week 18 and the playoff game. Those are 2 enormous games for the Vikings franchise. After Case Keenum threw the Minneapolis Miracle, how many games has this franchise played in with the stakes and the energy of week 18 last year and then into the playoffs, and what Seattle's got this year and them going into the playoffs? I can think of going to San Francisco, because remember, they were a 6 seed going against New Orleans. We all thought they were going to get crushed in 2019. They pull off the win, but there was not a lot of excitement about that playoff game going into it. And we all kind of thought Mike Zimmer was going to get fired after they lost. So San Francisco, so they get the big win. They go to San Francisco, they get killed. Since then, what? Was anybody jacked about the Giants game in the playoffs after they had a negative point differential? I mean, since 2017, there's one game I could think of outside of and now 2 years in a row, this same quarterback is playing in games of that magnitude. I think that certainly says a lot about him. And Brock Purdy is damn good and has been to a Super Bowl before too. So I don't know, like somebody's got to lose this game, which always makes me sad.
Yeah, it's well, just to kind of piggyback off of what you talked about with the Seattle offense and the records and stuff with Sam Darnold. They score 30 points in this next game. That will get them to 500 on the season.
Wow.
They're sitting at 470 points right now. And we know that their defense is great. The point differential's 181. So, that's a combination of great offense, great defense. And I think what Darnold has done, the other part of this that cannot be overstated, and again, doesn't look too kindly on the Vikings when I say this, but Sam Darnold's in the prime of his career. This is the best football. I mean, obviously, it's the best football he's ever played in his life, but he's at that age where quarterbacks play their best football. He's in his late 20s. He's playing great. The team loves him. They love him out there in Seattle. And if they win this game in Santa Clara and they get a home field advantage and they get to the NFC Championship game, and because what's going to happen there. They get to the NFC Championship game and Darnold's going to throw an interception and everybody's going to be like, see? But it'll be the NFC Championship game and it'll be Sam Darnold in that NFC Championship game. That holds a lot of weight, and what he's done these last 2 years it should be applauded, because usually when guys have a breakout season, it's usually just for that one season. If it's a guy that people want to write off, it's usually just lasts for that one season and then we never hear from him again. This guy's done it 2 years in a row now. He deserves his flowers.
I'm going to be thinking about Dan Campbell and what he said after that loss forever, because I feel like this is the year for Seattle. Like if it doesn't happen, then it's like, hey, that was probably your shot. Because I mean, they're an extremely strong and healthy team. The concern I have over Darnold specifically in his own performance is that recently his level of play has started to even off a little bit, and I think a lot of it is one, teams figure out your tendencies over the year. And I don't know if Clint Kubiak was the best tendency breaker when he was the Minnesota Vikings offensive coordinator, and it seems like they figured some stuff out there. Even Carolina was, changing the defensive look after the snap and got some, bad plays from Darnold in that game. And he didn't have a great game against the Carolina Panthers, and they came home with that win anyway. And the same kind of thing went for the Rams game. His overall numbers have started to slip a little, and I think their offensive line just is not good enough to go all the way through the playoffs. They need the home field advantage. They need every edge they can get. I think if they lose this game, they don't go that far in the playoffs just based on their defense and one wide receiver and a poor offensive line and 2 mediocre running backs that don't set, the world on fire. I'm just not sure it's quite enough to be a Super Bowl champion if they don't get the home field advantage. But it's going to be fascinating, man. That San Francisco defense is so banged up that they give up a lot of points. And I will take Kyle Shanahan in a game like this and I'll take Brock Purdy in a game like this over Darnold and over a less experienced coach. But man, heavyweight, and all of us are jealous because I like to cover games like this, and I will be watching it with everybody else. So Brian Murphy, Manny Hill, we will do one more roundtable next week. And I feel like we've been in off-season mode for a couple weeks, but maybe we'll do a mock draft. Maybe we'll get everybody's off-season plans, off-season. We'll do some off-season predictions of what's going to happen next week, and we'll break down whatever happens. If it's JJ McCarthy, we'll talk about his performance. If it's Brett Rippon, then we'll talk about not Brett Rippon.
Well, do you think after 18 weeks we could finally have a real serious discussion about JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, it's a good idea. The Minnesota McCarthy's analysis.
He's flown under the radar for 2 years now. It's about time we deal with him.
That's right.
If it's Brett Rippon, can we just talk about how awesome his uncle played in the Super Bowl when it was here?
Yeah. No, actually we can't, because that's a bad childhood memory. Thanks, Manny, for bringing it up.
Hey, it was at the Metrodome.
It was at the Metrodome, and the Buffalo Bills forgot where their helmets were for some players.
Just one guy.
I forgot about that.
But I gotta tell you, I watched that Super Bowl back not too long ago because, like many other folks, I'm sure, when NFL Network plays those Super Bowl recaps, I will get inspired to go watch some of the full games. And I was watching that back, and the Washington squad was insane. It might be the best group of football players ever assembled, top to bottom. Like them, the 94 49ers, like the 90 whatever or the 72 Dolphins, the 90 whatever Cowboys. Like, it's up there for rosters. I mean, the Bills had no chance. They were just so much better. They ran into these behemoth teams. But anyway, thanks for tossing that out there, Manny. Anyway, we will see you guys next week, one way or the other. Actually, just Murph now after that. But go watch Kirk play some football, and we'll talk to you guys later. Football.
Football.